In a crowded town where the streets were always busy and voices never seemed to rest, there lived a woman named Margaret Lewis. She was in her early 50s, a widow, and the owner of a small restaurant near the old market square. The place was modest, wooden tables worn smooth by time, a bell above the door that rang softly, and a smell of warm soup that drifted into the street. Margaret opened her doors early every morning and closed them late at night. People often said her food was simple, but her kindness was unforgettable. Her door, like her heart, was always open. Margaret believed that if she was kind enough, life would eventually be kind in return. When customers came without money, she served them anyway. When neighbors borrowed food, she smiled and told them they could pay later. Travelers stayed for hours, resting, talking, and sometimes leaving without ordering much at all. Margaret never rushed them. She never complained. She never said no. People praised her endlessly. They said she had the biggest heart in town. What no one ever asked was whether that heart was tired. Among the regular visitors was a well-known businessman named Victor Hale. He arrived almost every day in pressed jackets and polished shoes, carrying himself with confidence. He always chose the best table near the window. Victor ordered the finest dishes and ate slowly, as if the restaurant belonged to him. Often, when it was time to pay, he simply smiled and said, "I bring you attention. People see me here. That helps your business." Margaret believed him. She nodded politely and cleared his plate without asking for payment. Over time, Victor grew comfortable, too comfortable. He stayed longer, sometimes the entire afternoon. He began giving instructions to the staff, commenting on portions, suggesting changes. He invited his friends and expected them to be served without charge. Margaret felt uneasy, but she said nothing. She told herself that kindness required patience. She smiled even when her chest felt heavy. She remained silent even when her energy faded. Days turned into months, and then winter arrived. The cold settled deep into Margaret's bones. She began feeling weak, her hands trembling as she carried plates. Some mornings, standing for long periods, became painful. Medical bills started to pile up, and the restaurant's expenses grew heavier. The kindness that once felt natural now felt like a burden she carried alone. Still, she kept the doors open. One week, Margaret fell ill. Her body finally asked for rest she had long ignored. She stayed home, wrapped in blankets, barely able to stand. The restaurant operated with difficulty. Instead of visiting her or offering help, Victor sent his assistant, not with warm words or concern, but with demands. He wanted meals delivered. He wanted the best dishes prepared specially. He wanted discounts. Margaret listened quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, and agreed. One evening, she closed the restaurant early and returned home exhausted. That same night, thieves broke in. They had noticed her absence, her weakness, her solitude. The next morning, the damage was clear. Broken shelves, missing supplies. Margaret stood in the doorway, her heart aching. When Victor heard the news, he shook his head and said, "You should have been more careful. You need to protect what you own." His words were sharp, empty of care. Something inside Margaret shifted in that moment. Recovery took weeks. During that time, she had space to think. She replayed moments she had once ignored, the unpaid meals, the endless demands, the silence she had mistaken for peace. Slowly, strength returned to her body, and clarity returned to her mind. She realized that her kindness had turned into permission. Permission for others to take without giving, to stay without respect, to demand without gratitude. One quiet morning, the restaurant door remained closed. People stopped and stared. Some knocked, some complained. A few grew angry. After several days, the door opened again, but the place looked different. Clear prices were written neatly on the wall. Opening and closing hours were posted by the entrance. The tables were fewer. The atmosphere was calm. No free meals, no endless stays, no unspoken expectations. Victor arrived as usual and laughed when he saw the changes. "You have changed," he said. "Friends do not act like this." Margaret met his eyes calmly. Her voice was steady when she replied, "A friendship that costs me myself was never friendship." Victor never returned. Many others did not either. Some whispered that she had become selfish. Margaret listened without anger. She had learned that peace often looks like selfishness to those who benefited from your silence. Something unexpected happened in the weeks that followed. The restaurant became quieter. The food tasted better. Margaret smiled more often. She rested when she needed to. She worked without fear, without resentment. The customers who remained respected her time and her effort. She felt lighter, not because she had less kindness, but because she had finally learned where to place it. Many people believe kindness means always saying yes. It does not. When you are always available, people stop respecting your time, your energy, and your life. Setting boundaries does not make you cold, it makes you healthy. Real relationships do not drain you, they support you. Strength does not always raise its voice. Sometimes it simply closes the door at the right time. If you find yourself always exhausted, always giving, always explaining, pause for a moment. Ask yourself whether your open door is truly helping others or quietly hurting you. Practice this today in a small way. Before agreeing to something that costs your peace, take a breath. Give yourself a moment. Choose one small no that protects your energy. Notice how it feels. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors you learn to close gently. Remember this one truth: kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs it. And stay with us for more quiet lessons on strength and self-respect.